First of all, it was a risk because just over 2/3 of it was my life savings. I had a commitment from CBS, which is today Sony Music, but they had a limited financial commitment, and to complete it and to do what I had hoped to achieve, I had to essentially kick in my own money. In fact, I remember sitting down with my family at the time saying, we're now into our own money. It's either carry on or wave the white flag. And I can remember the meeting at my house, and they said this is one of the only times in your whole career, perhaps, that you'll be able to create a project and have so many fingers on it that you can at least say when you're done, it's 100% from the heart, and you will have completed something that you may never have a chance again to do in this particular way. So we went for it. Did I have any feeling there was a folly? I think the whole thing was considered a folly right from the start. I remember the band walking in and saying, what? A 2-hour continuous play recording, as I'm trying to explain this to them, and others just all along the way. But what spurred me on was this wonderful dark Victorian tale, and an opportunity as a composer and as a producer to interpret that story in a way that my style of writing, arranging, and producing would come out very freely. We had to wait almost a year from when it was handed into CBS, firstly for them to make a decision, would they release it? When they finally did, it was a great relief. Then the next hurdle, obviously, was how do we reach the public, the media, how will they respond to it? So it was a long path to it being released and then discovering that there was an audience for it, because I was a young musician and everything else I was doing was very much in the genre of contemporary writing and production, but I was composing something that I couldn't compare it with. It's a storyline that's mostly acted. There's a lot of singing and thematic work, the tunes, the themes, the sounds, they come, they go, they reappear. There's no cuts like a pop album. And amongst it all, I'm in the middle of the disco revolution, and when disco was king of the dance floor and punk was the revolutionary music of the day. And here I am trying to do this continuous play grand recording. I didn't even think of it because it's been sort of put into that box of a concept work, concept album. I never even thought of it like that. Otherwise I would have called it that. It was a musical version, just an interpretation through music of a story. So even that I had no pre-plan about it. I just hoped it would come out and it may find an audience. If you had asked me 33 years ago when it was released, would I be talking to you about something that has survived so long and resonated, and its popularity is definitely there, I would have laughed. But then again, most people laughed at me when I first started the project, so I guess I'd have been laughing at myself as to the fact that I am 33 years later seeing a continued expansion and acceptance by audiences all over the world and at different ages. We now have children that come to see the show because they've heard more of the technology in this 35-foot tall fighting machine that lands on stage and fires heat rays at the audience, and then they discovered, oh, there's some music attached to it, whatever. And then there are others that just know it as a musical work. I couldn't have predicted any of that. No, I'm thrilled. I'm very proud of the people that I've worked with all along the way, and it's a large collaborative work. And though, yes, I've composed it, I've produced it, I worked with a main lyricist, an author who adapted the novel, and all the artists and the musicians. So they all put their stamp onto it, and maybe that is why it has endured in its form, and I hope new generation will be perceived in its own way, in a similar way. My dad and I always thought that the story was so visual, and that because I composed it as this complete work, that if it enjoyed a commercial acceptance, hopefully a creative acceptance, it did have a place in live entertainment. I think at the time we would have been thinking more like either concert renditions or perhaps West End Broadway interpretation. arenas and the technology that now exists just didn't exist in that period, so I wouldn't have been thinking like I am now. But I know that every time we sort of explored the opportunities that were there for that period, we kept sort of rejecting it. What was in the head, we couldn't get onto a canvas, so to speak, a big space that allowed the story to come alive and to perform it live, as well, to integrate that live performance against the huge visuality that the War of the Worlds is. So it came around, I guess, at the right time in terms of when we put it into the arenas, and each one just grows and grows, and it's a wonderful experience. You know, I have the best seat in the house. You know, I'm conducting every show, so it's all around me. Everything is above me, around me, behind me in the audience. So it's a wonderful experience, certainly for me, and I think the audiences feel the same. There's things that happen over the audience. Without saying too much about them, there's a couple of new ones as well. We mix live and surround sound, so you're, no matter where you sit in these arenas, you're engulfed by the sound, and that's the music, sound design, sound effects, little tricks of sound. So you do get a feeling of being encompassed, and the show in scale is so big that you just see so much happening and hear so much that I think the feeling is that you're part of it. We even have characters that pretty much as soon as the doors open, they're working the audience. They're as amateur astronomers with Victorian telescopes. They wander around the audience. Come on into the, it's almost like, come on into our world. Now that you're into this arena, forget it. You're into the War of the Worlds, and that helps warm people up. And so by the time the show is actually starting, subtly there's been sort of a sucking in. So it all comes together.